seeking an opening. The White House releases guidelines on when and how officials plan to restart the U.S. economy. Inside look. The chaplain for the House of Representatives, a Catholic priest, tells us about ministering to lawmakers during the coronavirus pandemic. Revised numbers. Officials in China now say their initial reports on the number of deaths in Wuhan, where the outbreak began, were wrong. And Christ on the cross. Orthodox Christians in Jerusalem commemorate Good Friday. On EWTN News Nightly for Friday, April 17th, 2020. Good evening, and thanks for joining us tonight. I'm Tracy Sable. Tonight, after weeks of hunkering down, America has an ambitious plan to get back to work and get back to life. A word of caution, though, it is not going to happen as fast as many would like. President Donald Trump says he's going to leave the timeline up to governors. White House correspondent Owen Jensen reports now remotely. Owen?
Millions of people unemployed, trillions of dollars in rescue plans, and people just stuck at home. And tonight, the White House has a roadmap to reopen the country.
President Donald Trump lays out plans to get back to work.
My administration is issuing new federal guidelines that will allow governors to take a phased and deliberate approach to reopening their individual states.
The White House plan calls for restaurants and gyms to reopen in the first phase, schools and daycares in the second, and most remaining businesses in the third. The results will be carefully monitored.
Our goal will be to quickly identify and address any outbreaks and put them out rapidly.
As for timelines, we asked President Trump what he anticipates for upcoming milestones like Memorial Day and Pentecost.
Look, I don't want anyone coming back that isn't in position to come back. The last thing we want is for, let's say, a New York to come back too soon or a New Jersey to come back too soon. We want them to come back when they're ready, but they're really heading in a good direction, and I think it'll be much faster than people think. I think it'll be quicker, but it's got to be safe.
The governors of all 50 states will play a key role in America's comeback.
We can't think of this like flipping a light switch. It's like turning a dial. The more disciplined we are now, the faster we can turn it.
The plan to reopen America is good news on Wall Street. Meanwhile, the White House continues efforts to secure $250 billion more dollars for small businesses. The earlier cash ran out.
You see the unemployment insurance claims. They're very high. It's a dreadful story. There's a lot of hardship. Let's get moving.
And as the U.S. and world battle back, an urgent request for the young.
But their lives are being totally upended. I appeal to families everywhere and leaders at all levels. Protect our children.
And talking about faith, President Trump said as we mourn those who died, that God has welcomed them home into his eternal and loving embrace and that they will not be forgotten. Tracy?
Okay, thank you, Owen. Correspondent Owen Jensen reporting remotely tonight. The administration's guidelines allowing governors to make the final decisions in reopening the economy marks a shift in tone. Earlier this week, President Trump claimed that he had total authority in deciding how and when to do so. Join me now on Skype to talk more about this political dynamic is Adam White, resident scholar at the American Enterprise Institute and law professor at the Antonin Scalia Law School. Adam, welcome back.
Well, thank you very much.
So, Adam, let's talk about this balance of power in times of crisis between the federal government and the states. What does the Constitution say?
Well, the Constitution does vest the executive power in the president. They gave the president that much power so that he can lead in time of emergency. But in a public health crisis like this, direction of power quickly shifts to the states, who need to take the lead in protecting public health at the state and local level.
Adam, I know the nation's governors say that they need support from the federal government, especially when it comes to testing for the virus, something that's going to be critical in reopening the economy. What responsibility does the federal government have in that respect?
Well, they're exactly right. The federal government can play a couple of key roles. One is informational, in terms of spreading information and offering these guidelines, but also in support, coordinating response and helping to directly support the states with financial support and other resources so that they can develop these tests and deploy them.
We're also seeing a growing number of protests staged across the United States to oppose the stay-at-home orders amid the coronavirus pandemic, and even some federal lawsuits, such as ones filed against the governor of Michigan over those orders. Are you surprised, and do you anticipate more of this?
Well, I'm not surprised that Americans are getting frustrated at such a challenging time. That said, President Trump used the exact right words yesterday when he said that there needs to be a phased and deliberate return to normalcy. Deliberate is key. The states are going to have to deliberate carefully on when to move forward. And the best thing that President Trump can do right now in that respect is to calm people down and encourage them to support the state and local governments.
Adam, what's the role of Congress in all of this?
Congress needs to step up. They need to do more legislation. They should hold hearings to help amplify and elevate experts outside of government and help amplify best practices. They need to stay engaged, and right now they've left the scene.
Adam, any final thoughts right now for our viewers on what's happening right now?
I think right now the key is what President Trump said: slow, phased, deliberate. Be very, very careful, because if we race too quickly towards the end of this, we'll find ourselves right back where we started.
Well, Adam, thank you so much for your insight. We always appreciate you coming on. Adam White, resident scholar at the American Enterprise Institute and also law professor at the Antonin Scalia Law School. Thank you again.
Thank you.
While lawmakers struggle to find new ways to help out-of-work Americans, spiritual guidance is just a phone call away. House and Senate chaplains are available for counseling and prayer. Capitol Hill correspondent Eric Rosales spoke with House Chaplain Father Patrick Conroy.
The coronavirus pandemic has brought a lot of changes to Americans, from being forced to wear masks to social distancing from others. But one thing that hasn't changed is our faith. And House Chaplain Father Patrick Conroy is bringing his faith to lawmakers here on Capitol Hill.
The prayer will be offered by our chaplain, Father Conroy.
Let us pray. God of mercy, thank you for giving us another day.
Father Conroy's words of encouragement ring out across the mostly empty House floor. Lawmakers out of session and working remotely in this age of the coronavirus. Outside, Father tells me the chaplain of the House plays a unique role for lawmakers.
The office of the chaplaincy is considered a great value by the members because it's a reminder to them of things beyond themselves, beyond what's going on here, but also the presence of somebody who isn't working the political angle.
And he finds in his quiet time his ministry is reaching members on a new level.
It's actually been quite edifying. I've had better conversations with a number of members than I ever had here. They're not looking over their shoulder at their staffer who's telling them they got to be somewhere else or do something else. And so actually the quality of the conversation is much better.
Father Conroy was appointed as chaplain of the House of Representatives in May of 2011. He's the first Jesuit priest and the second Catholic to hold the position. He tells me he hopes this difficult experience leaves people changed for the better.
There will be a heightened consciousness that one hopes people don't get over in a hurry.
Father Conroy says after all this is over, he hopes people will continue to have a greater appreciation for others. From Capitol Hill, Eric Rosales, EWTN News Nightly.
The communist authorities in the Chinese city where the coronavirus pandemic started are now saying the number of people who died is a lot higher than first reported. Chinese officials now say 50% more people died in the city of Wuhan since December, but they are rejecting accusations there was a cover-up. The number of deaths was revised up by 1,290, bringing the total to almost 4,000. The coronavirus pandemic was first reported in Wuhan late last year. The Prime Minister of Japan is begging people to stay inside so hospitals there do not reach a breaking point. Shinzo Abe said today that Japan has not reached its target reductions of new infections. He's trying to avoid overwhelming Japan's healthcare systems. Pope Francis has written a reflection on COVID-19. It was published in a Spanish online newspaper called Vida Nueva. He reflects on the connection between Jesus' resurrection and the current crisis and expressed his wish to society to find the necessary antibodies of justice, charity, and solidarity. Father Ezra Sullivan, professor of moral theology at the Angelicum University, joins us now from Rome. Father, thanks for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Father, Pope Francis and other Vatican officials have urged leaders to ensure health care for everyone, especially now. Can you talk about the positives of doing that and maybe some of the negative implications?
Absolutely. I think the Pope is referring to what we would call the Good Samaritan rule, which is whenever someone has an emergency situation, we as Catholics ought to show them as much care as we can. And that means whether they are in crisis because of a gunshot wound, the coronavirus, or simply because they got into a car crash or something normal, out of charity, we should help them. Now, that's different from saying that everybody ought to have access to health care guaranteed by the government. I would say that, in fact, if the government is going to be in charge of over 17% of the economy, that this is going to lead towards socialism. And socialism is something that Leo XIII condemned all the way back in 1891. So I think there's a difference between helping people in emergencies and offering health care as a standard, as it were, gift or service that the government guarantees.
Can you talk about the balance maybe between looking out for the common good's health while also still trying to sustain the economy?
Oh, absolutely. So health, we would say, of course, is a common good. We talk about herd health, where it's not just an individual, but it's all of us together influence each other's health. But of course, there are other common goods to consider, such as, well, the good of the country, fundamental human rights, the right to worship. And we would say that these rights ought not to be in conflict, but if they are, the higher the right, the more important it needs to be protected. And so the right to religious freedom, as Catholics, we always have the right to worship. And what should happen is that we should be in contact with the state in order to guarantee that we can worship, but also the issue about the economy, we would say, becomes somewhere between the right to worship and the right to health. So we want to look at all of these goods at the same time and try to ensure that there's a proper balance in recognizing how to address each one in turn.
Yeah, Father, you brought up the right to worship. I know a lot of Christians right now are trying to decipher if their religious freedom is maybe being imposed upon. What do you think about that, and how can we navigate living our faith right now?
Well, I would say, first of all, we have to say that the state has no right whatsoever to forbid all Catholic services. We have a God-given right given to us by Christ himself, who founded the church, to worship. However, we should say that the church should listen to experts as to when and how it's going to be safe for our adherents to worship. And so to make a prudential decision, we should try to ensure that people's health is respected. But at the same time, when the Pharisees tried to close down the early church from preaching, St. Peter responded, "We must obey God rather than men." And so I would argue that if grocery stores can stay open and do it in a safe way, or supermarkets or Walmart, likewise, the church should be able to stay open and to have reasonable measures to protect people, whether that means spacing out how many people come to worship at once, or say, one idea that I heard about was everybody whose name starts with an A or a B can worship on Monday. Everybody whose name starts with a C or D, Tuesday. So this way it ensures that people have access. You don't have to say, oh, in 2 months, I'm going to go to Holy Mass. You can say, next Monday's my turn.
Now, Father, thank you so much for your insight. Love it. Really a help to all of us. Father Ezra Sullivan, professor of moral theology at the Angelicum. Thank you again.
Thank you.
Coming up, how a New York-based Catholic group is helping people recover from the coronavirus. And pro-life lawmakers send a bill to Kentucky's governor. For patients hospitalized with COVID-19, recovery can be a long process. This week, New York-based Catholic Health opened a dedicated rehabilitation center to help with their care. The center, a former Catholic nursing home, is the first facility of its kind in Western New York. It provides both rehabilitation and medical care for COVID-19 patients who are discharged from Catholic health hospitals but aren't ready to return home. Joining me now on Skype is Mark Sullivan. He is president and CEO of Catholic Health. Mark, welcome to the show.
Thank you, and I'm glad to be here.
Well, we're learning more and more every day about COVID-19 and the toll that it takes on patients, especially those who've been hospitalized because of it. Can you tell us about your continuum of care approach in helping those recover?
Sure. Well, first, I'd like to start by letting everyone know how important healthcare heroes are out there around the world that are fighting the COVID virus, and we're very fortunate to have them at the forefront. Catholic Health has a continuum of care that we put together. We've created the first COVID treatment center at St. Joseph campus of one of our hospitals. We converted within a week. And now, as you just mentioned, we've converted a nursing home that was closed, a non-Catholic nursing home, to provide the continuum of care. We feel it's very important that we lead healthcare, much like our founders and foundresses did so many years ago. So the way that the health system works is our hospital is a COVID-only hospital. We can take up to over 200 patients there at the time that they can be discharged. Now they'll be able to be discharged directly into a Catholic facility, which will enable them to recover from COVID, convalesce, shed the rest of the disease, and then move on to their home and to their regular lives.
Mark, what role does faith play in all of this?
I can start with our founders and foundresses. Catholic Health was founded by the Daughters of Charity, the Sisters of Mercy, the Franciscan Sisters of St. Joseph, and the Diocese of Buffalo. You need to rewind back 173 years ago when Ursula Mattingly, the Daughter of Charity, came to Buffalo and founded the first hospital in Buffalo. After that, we go to 1916. We know that Sister Mary Agnes, the Sister of Mercy, started the first Mercy Hospital. And then just thinking of Sister Angelica back in 1981, we have to follow these women religious. And I tell my team all the time that a cholera outbreak, no GoFundMe page, no internet, no statistics, but just going on your faith. Faith is all we talk about at Catholic Health. We know that the faith is the absence, or fear is the absence of faith, and we really focus on that. We're founded by wonderful leaders and women religious and ordained, and we need to continue that healing ministry and reveal the healing love of Jesus to all. We're all inspired by that every day we come to work.
Wonderful. So wonderful to hear that. What are you seeing in terms of the need for long-term care for COVID-19 patients, and how exactly will your new facility help them?
What we did is work closely with Governor Cuomo, who's been an outstanding leader for us in New York State. It's important to think of when we look at the surge of healthcare, you're going to have patients that need acute care services. My background is non-acute care, so I asked myself and our team, what happens to these patients when they're ready to be discharged? Because we may need those beds for other patients. Erie County and the Buffalo area is the largest hotspot outside of New York City, so we need to prepare for that. So this site that we have opened, 80 beds, we walked through the site one day, and within 7 days, we had it totally converted into a faith-based facility with the help of the Department of Health of New York State, and it really helps the continuum. So our ability to move patients within our Catholic network enables us to deal with the surge, enables us to deal with different dynamics a patient may have, and really try and support the community in a way that we did over 170 years ago.
Mark, I'm curious, how has what you learned in caring for COVID-19 patients, how has it helped you in the design of this facility and also in keeping patients and medical staff safe?
It really is a force multiplier. If you picture this, in a typical hospital, you'll have a COVID patient, maybe a regular patient, a COVID patient. And the challenge we've had is that you use a lot of personal protective equipment, or PPE. So you're going to be changing your gear, if you will, between the different rooms. So at the St. Joseph campus, the treatment center, which is the hospital we converted, we actually have seen a reduction in utilization of PPE by almost 75%. Now, we're using PPE appropriately, but we've been able to take the hospital, much like the nursing home, and break it into 3 sections. We have a green section, which I could walk in dressed like this. We have a yellow section, which means you're going to be transitioning into where COVID patients are, and a red section. 75% of the hospital is a red section, so that means as the caregivers move, when they get to the yellow section, someone is helping them dress in their PPE, checking to make sure it's all done properly, and they go to work their shift. They're not changing between rooms except if it's necessary with particular isolation gowns, et cetera. The same is applied at the nursing home. So we took that same strategy, and just to keep it in perspective, it was just March 19th that we announced the St. Joseph campus converting to a treatment center. And ironically, at the end of the day, someone texted me and said, "Do you realize that that's St. Joseph's Day that you converted St. Joseph Hospital?" So there's your faith base again. So what's enabled us to do is, as a force multiplier, is take the care and have it in a concentrated area in a facility. And when you go to the COVID nursing home, the whole nursing home is COVID patients. So we have a separate area that's green, a separate area that is yellow, and the area of treatment is the red zone. So people that go in there know that the patients are being cared for in a very respectful way. Probably the most revealing areas is we have chaplains that go into the red zone with chaplain on their chest or wearing a crucifix, and the staff just resonate and come to them for the support that they need. We're very proud of the care we provide. We know that many patients won't make it, but we also know that we're going to save a lot of lives. And so we spend time with the dying right to the last breath. Our staff is there with them. And for our staff, they came up with this wonderful idea at our treatment center where if someone is discharged, and we discharged over 173 people at this site that would have not made it if they weren't treated for COVID, there's a song played. There's multiple songs played throughout the whole hospital. It just reminds those nurses, caregivers, spiritual care leaders that got into a faith-based ministry because we want to reveal the healing love of Jesus to all, that there is hope in everything that we do. And we've kind of changed our name in a way from Catholic Health to Catholic Hope, because it's the spirit and the light that guides us to deliver during the most difficult times. And that's what our team has been focusing on recently in the last month with COVID.
Mark, thank you so much. Wonderful work that you all are doing, and thank you for your time today. Mark Sullivan, President and CEO of Catholic Health. Thanks again.
Thank you. God bless.
Lawmakers in Kentucky are attempting to give the state's pro-life attorney general the opportunity to regulate abortion clinics. The bill passed earlier this week on the last day of the legislative session. It is not clear if Kentucky's Democrat governor will sign the measure. Up next, a Catholic service offers advice to parents who are homeschooling during the coronavirus pandemic. And in the Holy Land, Orthodox Christians take precautions as they commemorate Good Friday. Pope Francis reminds the faithful to seek time with the Lord every day, even when going to church is not an option.
Col popolo e con I sacramenti, sempre.
At his daily Mass at the Vatican, the Holy Father says Christ is always walking with us, and we can become familiar with him through daily prayer and resuming the sacraments when quarantines are lifted. Pope Francis also prayed today, especially for women who are pregnant. The Diocese of Las Cruces in New Mexico allowing churches to reopen, but priests can only celebrate Mass with less than 5 people in attendance, and they all have to stay 6 feet apart. A diocese spokesman is telling parishioners to call first, or they may be turned away. Students across the country are at home, but this is no vacation, with many using remote learning. A new twist on homeschooling is now the reality during the coronavirus pandemic. Correspondent Mark Irons joins us now by Skype. Mark.
Tracy, full disclosure, I was actually homeschooled. Now, I recently spoke to an accredited Catholic homeschooling service that is offering advice and resources to parents.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America.
9-year-old Zach Stamper from Kettering, Ohio, helps lead his neighborhood in the Pledge of Allegiance every morning. That's how a typical day at Zach's school would begin. He misses going to the classroom.
It takes up 6 hours of our day, and it gives us something to do.
Zach joins kids across the globe who are now learning remotely. And many parents are having to switch up their routine as well.
I'm on my way to work.
Melanie Malloy is an emergency room doctor in New York City, but with kids learning at home, she has added responsibility.
I had a little bit of a stressful morning with my children, trying to get them set up for homeschool.
This week, New York City Mayor Bill de Blasio said schools could reopen in the fall, but for the remainder of this year, remote learning is a reality.
In March, for example, we had our largest March ever in terms of our enrollments, in terms of our inquiries, in terms of new families enrolling.
While kids switch to learning at home, It's a practice that's been in use for years with homeschooling. Ken Clark is the vice president of Seton Home Study based in Front Royal, Virginia. Seton offers a Catholic curriculum and resources for homeschooling. Clark offers advice to struggling families at this time.
If you can read, you can homeschool. It is very unusual to find a student who cannot be homeschooled.
And he says homeschooling can provide an opportunity for families to grow closer.
When you send a child away to school, that child is out of your sight for a long time. Now, when you're homeschooling, of course, you're building and strengthening the family.
The College Board has announced that some college applicants may be able to take their SATs from home. This home test would be digital and rely on remote proctoring, and that could include using the computer's camera and microphone to monitor movement or talking. Tracy.
All right. Thank you so much, Mark. Correspondent Mark Irons reporting tonight. And a reminder, EWTN broadcasts Mass throughout the day. Mass airs at 8 a.m., noon, and 7 p.m. Eastern. We're also showing the Pope's daily Mass and other special programming throughout the day. We also have Eucharistic adoration from 9 a.m. to 6 p.m. on our website, EWTN.com. And finally tonight, Orthodox Christians in Jerusalem celebrated Good Friday today, but without the traditional procession along the path that Jesus walked. Huge crowds from around the world usually walk along the Via Dolorosa in the Old City, but not with coronavirus restrictions. A Greek Orthodox priest showed the keys to the Holy Sepulchre, and clerics opened the huge doors as Israeli police patrolled the narrow streets. We thank you for watching tonight. For the entire EWTN News Nightly team, I'm Tracy Sable. We're back on Monday with more news from a Catholic perspective. Good night and God bless.